Hey everyone, how's it going? I just recorded this entire video that I wanted to do, and then in the last 10 seconds my computer died, so here we go again. I am back in California, and it's been a while since I've done this. I say that every time, but it's true. The last video I did was in September, when I had just kind of recently gotten back to Argentina after celebrating my sister's wedding here in LA, and so I was like really looking forward to getting back in the groove and kind of like getting into the swing of things, and then COVID hit a few months later and here we are. So I'll explain that. But yeah, so off of the last video, things to follow up on, I ended up having a wonderful trip with my two friends that came to visit in November for Thanksgiving. One of my really good friends, an old roommate from San Luis Obispo, brought a dog who is now my little pride and joy. She's right there. It's dark and messy, so ignore that. But yeah, she is wonderful and amazing, and I'm so grateful to have her. Her name is Lola, and she is a dog that my friend rescued on a trip that she went on in Mexico, and the dog lived with us for a while, and then Patience, my friend, was trying to find a home for her, and at the same time I was also looking for a dog, but knew that at that time knew that I was going to be moving here to Argentina, and so the timing didn't really work out. And then chatting with her on the phone like a few months before November, and she was like, what if I bring you Lola? And I was like, oh my god. So it worked out beautifully, super grateful for that. And yeah, this dog is a blessing, like literally. And now I'm like, what would I do without her? We do not deserve dogs. But yeah, so that was an incredible, awesome change. It's the first dog that I've had on my own, so it's been super fun to just take her everywhere and show her the world and play with her, and everybody loves her, and she's just such a good animal. So that was a big change. And then at the same time that friend came, another friend of mine from childhood, Taylor, came, and we went to this amazing national park in Argentina that also spans actually into Brazil, and is home to these natural waterfalls, like huge range of natural waterfalls called Iguazu Falls. And yeah, we basically spent like a few days in the jungle, like our hotel was basically in the middle of the jungle, and got to witness this incredible, natural, beautiful thing. And it was just amazing. And it really kind of it just inspired me to like really get the ball rolling on exploring more places in Argentina, because at that point in November I had been living there for months and hadn't explored anything really outside of Buenos Aires, at least not beyond like a 30-mile radius. So Argentina literally is home to so many different like climates, so many different like geographical regions. It's just like, I don't know, it was really different, whatever. It was just amazing to see that, and I really want to see more, basically, is the summary. And then I did end up finding an apartment. That was a big thing for me. I'm very into my home. I'm very particular about my home. I don't like to settle for less than what I want. So I spent a long time searching and ended up finding basically exactly what I wanted. And the timing was really interesting because, like I said, kind of in the last video, the peso had dropped a lot, and Argentina's economy was pretty down back then. It still is, but at that time that I was looking for the apartment was when the first like huge kind of wave had hit, and the drop was so drastic of the peso to the dollar ratio. And so I actually used that to my advantage that sounds really bad when you say it like that, but this was a recommendation from a lot of my friends too. It was like, when you're in this situation and you're able to pay a landlord in US dollars, you need to use that as leverage, right? So a lot of my friends who had signed a lease in September weren't getting the same rate that I was about to get, right? So I got a far better rate because of all of this stuff that was going on. So yeah, that's one of the things to think about with Argentina. There's a shitload of an influx of expats and digital nomads moving there, kind of similar to what happens in Thailand, because the rate is so good to live there, especially compared to California. Like anywhere in the US, yes, but especially California. So, you know, a lot of like people that I've been talking to that have been considering moving and then are asking me like, where should I go? I'm like, I mean, financially, if you're starting a business or something like that and you're trying to do something online, it makes sense to go to Argentina. So anyway, I ended up negotiating a lease with some really awesome landlords, and paid them in US dollars, so I got a better rate and I got exactly what I wanted. And that's pretty incredible because that learning process actually was really interesting because my mind was so used to what it's like to find housing in California, where maybe you have a list of like things you want, things that you can't live without, like you have a dog, so you have to have a place that approves dogs, or you need to have a yard or whatever, right? And then you have the things where you're like, I'd like to have a washer dryer. Obviously I could survive without that, but like I'd like to have one. And so everyone has their thing. And I'm used to like, if you find a place that has almost enough of what you want and that has a rate that you can afford, you are going to put a deposit down as quickly as you can because the competition is so high and you don't know if they're going to accept you or not. They might, whatever, say your credit's not good, so we're not going to accept you, or they, you know, whatever the case. But you're trying to lock in a year lease as soon as you can, right? In most cases. That is not the case in Argentina because the rate changes so much between the peso and the dollar, the exchange rate. You actually don't really want to sign a long-term lease if you can help it. For Argentines, the requirement there is a 2-year lease. But for a foreigner, you're probably going to pay more, but you'll have a shorter lease, which allows you to negotiate depending on where the peso drops or rises. So it was like interesting kind of lesson to learn. Talk to a lot of my friends there who are Argentine that are landlords or who are expats or who are digital nomads, and kind of like figured out from my awesome community there like what is the best thing to do. So that was like a learning curve for me to kind of get through that. But now I'm in an amazing apartment. It has like 2 terraces, a built-in grill to do like the Argentine asados. It has an amazing view because it's on the 9th floor. It's next to a park for Lola. It literally has like everything I would want. It's a brand new building. Like, it's amazing. So I'm super, super stoked about it. Yeah, I'm hoping to stay there after the 6 months is up, which is in July. But I'm not even there, so that's another whole other story. But yeah, so then nothing else was really like new or changing that much, except for I had been planning a trip for 6 months for my parents and my godfather to come visit me in March. And that's so fun to relive that. Yeah, I had been planning it for a really long time. We were going to go to Patagonia and Mendoza, which is a wine country in Argentina. And we had all of these wine tours already booked. We had the hotels. We had transportation from the airport to the hotel. We had our airline tickets. We had tours. It was done. Like, all of it was planned so that when they got here, it would be flawless. And I'd just be able to, like, take them around and not be planning anything and just enjoy it. And then, literally, as my godfather was on his plane from Alaska, where he lives, to Georgia, then Georgia, I think he was coming direct to Buenos Aires, he called me and was like, is Argentina gonna require us to quarantine? And at that point, the answer was yes. But the news had just hit that day that Argentina was requiring people to quarantine if they were coming from the U.S. They had already made the rule that if you were coming from Asia or if you were coming from Europe, you had to quarantine for 14 days, mandatory. But also in Argentina, people don't follow the rules. There was nothing happening at the airport. There was no screening, no nothing when you came in. I had just come back, actually, from the U.S. because I was there on a work trip, literally like the beginning of March, right? So when Seattle had its first case, I was flying from Miami back to Argentina after having been in Seattle. So that was like gnarly. The only thing they made me do when coming into Argentina was fill out a form that I handed to the customs agent, and they didn't say a word about it. They actually didn't even look at it. They just like set it on the table, and that was that. And I got in like nothing had happened. I'm going to the beach, that's why, or not the beach, to the pool. So I have a bathing suit. But yeah, so that was like, I was like expecting it to be the same. So when he called me and said that, I was like, no, just come. It's gonna be fine. Totally gonna be fine. Like, even if we have to quarantine, like, we'll stay in Buenos Aires. You guys can at least explore Buenos Aires. How are they gonna even like implement this rule of like making people quarantine. Like, I was hardcore in denial, guys. Like, this was the very early stages. Please forgive me for thinking like this. But yeah, it was like insane. And then, sorry, my computer just faded. So he was on his way, called me. I said, come anyways. He said, I'm going to call my wife. And I was like, okay. And then I called my parents. And my parents, same boat as me. We're coming no matter what. They can try to quarantine us. It's not going to happen. Like, how are they going to actually regulate that? There's no way. Like, we're coming, you know? So my godfather called me back and was like, I'm going home. And I was like, I totally understand. He's like, I just don't, it's not a matter of getting there. It's a matter of getting stuck and not being able to get out. And at this point, I was like, they're not going to close the border. Like, what? No. False news. They did, like 3 days later. So that was stupid. And I'm really glad that he went home. Also super sad. So I'm in tears. I'm freaking out. Obviously, I'm crying. I'm not even like focused on the COVID thing. I'm just so sad about my trip because I'm a diva and that's how I felt at the time. So yeah, that was like really upsetting. And then 2 days later on Friday is when my parents were supposed to come. So this was like, I think a Wednesday morning that Mel was supposed to arrive. And then, yeah, my parents were supposed to leave on Friday. So I think it was maybe Thursday. I had a conversation with them and the news was worse. Like it had gotten worse, right? It was like, what's going to happen after the quarantine? This is what they're doing. Like, what's the next step after quarantine, I should say. This is what they're doing in the airports now. Like, basically the news was starting to imply that like more was happening. I was getting notes from the U.S. Embassy, like of what was going on with U.S. citizens that were in Argentina. So I called my parents, you know, crying on Thursday night, like, I don't think you guys should come, you know? And they were like, we're fucking coming, like, we're coming. Oh, sorry. Like, we're coming no matter what, you know? Like, we're in the same boat as you. We want this trip to happen. We haven't been on a vacation forever. Like, you know, we haven't visited our daughter there. Like, we want to come. And so I was like, okay, cool. So we all slept on it. And Friday morning, which is, like, I think when they were supposed to leave that day, they were like, we shouldn't come. And I was like, yeah. So, you know, going through the stages of grief, we were definitely like in the denial sort of like next step there of like realizing that it wasn't the right thing to do. And so then that was like really, really upsetting. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll try to work on getting refunds and just like preparing myself for quarantining in Argentina, which I was supposed to already be doing because I had come from Seattle the week prior. And they had announced the mandatory quarantine basically like a week after I had gotten back, that anyone who had traveled in the U.S. in the last 2 weeks should be quarantining. So I actually like left my office midway one day, left all my shit there, just took like my computer and like essentials and like left, not knowing that I wouldn't be able to go back. So that was crazy. And then Saturday, my friend who's living in Argentina, he's from Ireland, calls me and is like, should we go home? And I was like, no, like, it's fine. It's totally fine. Not a big deal at all. We'll just quarantine here for the 14 days. It's gonna be fine. Whatever. He's like, no, really, like, I think we should go home. Like, I think we should go back. And I was like, okay. And we're talking back and forth, and I'm like, he's making a lot of sense, and like, I'm reading more about the news, and I had just been really depressed, so I wasn't like looking at anything. And yeah, so I called my mom, and she was like, no, don't come home. Like, you already have a flight to come home in May for this family reunion. Like, just hang tight, just chill there, be careful, whatever. I'm like, okay. I'm like thinking about it. Literally 5 minutes later, she calls me and she's like, you need to come home. She had like talked to my dad, and my dad had been like reading the news a little bit more than she had at the time. And basically we just thought about it, and it was like, at the end of the day, I'm a foreigner in Argentina. Like, as much as it's now my home, and I've built my home there, and I have my community there, and I have people I can call, I am still not a citizen. So I don't have my like document number, or what they call a DNI. Like, I don't have anything to show that I'm any sort of a citizen there. Like, literally on paper, I am a foreigner. And it doesn't matter how long I've been there, right? So that was kind of scary in itself. Like, if shit really hit the fan, which it has, what would happen, right? Like, how would I be treated? Would I be treated differently? Like, what if it came down to like certain number of beds? Like, literally those were the thoughts going through my head, which is super melodramatic, but still. And then the other thing is like the healthcare system. I know the healthcare system a lot better in the US. Like, we have urgent care facilities, and we have emergency at the hospital, and we have ambulance, and like, it's not that we don't have the same thing in Argentina. It's just that it's different. It's all called different names. It's different the way that the systems work. Some people have private insurance. Some people have the public health insurance, which is offered to anybody. You don't have to pay for it. So it's like there's this whole. It's just another world that I don't feel comfortable in yet. I just don't know it that well. I've only had to go to the hospital once, and that experience was super smooth. But in chaos, what was that going to be like? And especially as someone who doesn't speak the language like as well as I should. And then the last thing was just quarantining alone. Like, I live alone there. I don't have any family there that's even remotely close. So, yeah, it was kind of just like, if I have to quarantine, I might as well be at home with my family. So I made that decision on Saturday. And my buddy bought a flight. He's from Ireland, like I said. So he bought a flight to go home Sunday morning. And I bought a flight to go home Monday night because I needed to bring my dog. And my dog needed to get paperwork signed by the government to be able to be allowed in the United States when she arrived. Not just for getting on the plane, because that I kind of like was like, okay, that'll be fine. Like, I know how to handle that. But getting her into the United States was going to be an issue without doing all the things they needed to do with the Argentine government and their version of the USDA. So I bought my ticket for Monday night. This is Saturday. I started like low-key packing up a couple things that I thought I would want to bring home, like thinking I'm going to leave the majority of my stuff here. I'm just going to bring like clothes and whatever. Maybe I'll be gone until the end of April, like whatever. I'm not going to be gone for that long. Idiot. And so Sunday morning, I went to get all the paperwork printed that I need to get printed for like the airlines and stuff like that. And I'm watching the news, and they're like, oh, no flights are allowed as of Tuesday, and I'm flying Monday night. It's like, literally, we're stopping all international travel on Tuesday. You cannot get in or out of the country, period. Like, unless you're an Argentine that they're repatriating, or however you pronounce that word, you can't. And I was like, oh shit. And I called like one of my best friends, Jessie, who's super good in like high stress crisis situations, and I was like, what do I do? She's like, Chelsea, if anything at all happens with that flight on Monday, you're not going to be able to get out. Like, that's the worst case scenario, right? If the flight's delayed or the plane breaks or whatever, you're on like the 11 p.m. literally last flight that you could get on Monday night. And they're serious about shutting this on Tuesday, like from everything she's reading, everything I'm reading. So she's like, you should try to get on a flight today. And I was like, oh my God. So this is like Sunday, 11 a.m. And I'm like, just had printed the documents I needed to print. None of the vet offices are open besides emergency. None of the government offices are open because it's a Sunday and no one works on Sundays. So ended up figuring out that there is one government office at the international airport that's open 24 hours a day because of situations like this, where someone needs to get their dog out of the country or into the country or whatever, or foods and shit like that. And so you have to like have a place that's open. And I was like, perfect. And I called to confirm before I left for the airport, because it's an hour away, like, you're for sure going to have someone there, right? And they were like, yes, that office is open 24/7. Like, I'm positive. I work at the airport. I've worked here for 12 years. Like, I know. And I was like, cool, perfect. So Jessie, my friend, is like helping me transfer the flights, and she's like calling people for me. And I'm like calling American, and they're like, well, we don't have any seats on the flights tonight, except for like two flights that have 4 seats each. Like, you need to go now. So I was like, oh my God. So I literally ran home, ran to the vet's office, put Lola on the table. I was like, I need you to give me the paperwork for my dog now. Like, whatever it takes, tell me what you need, and we'll do it. And the woman was a freaking saint. I love her. Super sweet vet. She was like, oh, it's fine. Like, she's already gotten this shot before. Like, you have that paperwork here. She's already gotten this thing. She's like, I'm just going to sign this for you. This is the only thing you need. And I was like, you're freaking amazing. Love you to death. Thanks. So grabbed that, went home. It's maybe 3 o'clock. I'm trying to get on a flight that leaves at 10, and I wanted to get to the airport by 6. So I had from 3 to 5 to pack up my house and get the dog ready and go. So I am just shoving shit, like pulling shit out, pulling it in, throwing fridge food away, like anything that I can do. I hadn't paid rent, so I'm leaving like hundreds of dollars like on my counter in an envelope to like hidden somewhere to give to my landlord so that they don't kick me out of my apartment. I'm like figuring out what I think I'll need over the next, what I think is going to be 6 weeks or a month. And yeah, so basically in like a matter of 2 hours, I had packed up my whole place and had left the majority of it there, locked it up, dropped the key off at the security guard for my friend's apartment because no one was around, and just prayed that they'd give it to her. And yeah, so I get in a cab, I get to the airport, I've got 2 huge bags of my stuff. I go to the government office and they're like, "Are you flying tonight?" And I'm like, "No, but yes." I'm like, "My ticket is for tomorrow. I don't have a ticket for tonight yet, but I want to fly tonight." The line for American, which is the airline I'm flying on, is completely wrapped around the airport like twice. So there's no way I'm going to stand in line to see if I get the ticket before I know if I can get my dog. Because if my dog can't come, I'm not going. So, like, I need to do the dog first in my mind, right? So I go there and they're like, "Well, first of all, you don't have a ticket, so we can't do this." And I was like, "Yes, you can." And then they're like, "The guy who needs to sign this is like a special international vet who does not work on Sundays. He's not here." And I was like, "I called to make sure that someone would be here to sign this paperwork." And they were like, "Well, we can do everything else for you, and you can do the payment and whatever, but the one guy that has to sign one paper and give the stamp, that is what you need to give to the U.S. government, is not here." I'm like, oh my God. So I called Jesse, and I'm like, "What do you think I should do?" I'm like, "I brought 20,000 pesos with me," because I was like, some shit's gonna happen. I'm gonna have to pay somebody something to get what I want. And she was like, "See if you can call him." So I like go to the guy and I'm like, "Do you know this guy?" And he was like, "Yeah, his name is so-and-so." I'm like, "Oh, I know that guy." Because I had taken Lola to to Uruguay already. So I was like, I've taken her already. Like, I know this guy. I was like, "Do you have his phone number?" And he was like, "Yeah." I'm like, Call him right now. Ask him how much money it would take for him to get down here to the airport now. Because I have 1 hour before I need to go board my plane. Before they were going to start the boarding process. And so at this point, I had already gone to American. Luckily, the line was it was very random, but the line that I saw was not for American Airlines. It was for another one that was right next door. So I just walked right up to the woman and I was like, "I need to get home tonight. My ticket's for tomorrow. What can you do?" She's like, "We have no tickets." And I was like, "Check again." And she was like, "We have no tickets." And I was like, "For the love of God, check again. I need to get home tonight. Like, this is, you know what's happening right now. Like, I need to get home now." I'm like crying, And she's like, "Oh, here you go. I found a ticket." And I was like, "Dude, why did it take me crying for you to do something?" Like, God, and you didn't approach her all hot and heavy either, like you would expect for me. No, I was very like, "Hey, I'm just wondering, like, can you get me a ticket? I need to go now." Like, whatever. So, anyways, long story short, she finds the ticket. I go back to the office. That's when I said, "Can you call the guy?" Because now I have my ticket and I know I'm going home today. I want this guy to come today. If I had known that I was going to still risk trying to save my Monday ticket, I would have just gone to his office in the morning. I already had an appointment to go to his office Monday morning. So I just needed him to come today. So we called and I was like, "How much will it cost?" And he was like, $100. And I was like, "Cool, come now. I have the pesos with me right now." Like, I sent him a picture of the money, literally. And I sent him a picture of all the paperwork. He drew up the paperwork at his house, the one paper that he needed to sign. And he had his son drive him an hour from where we both live to the airport. And I met up with him, I think I met up with him like an hour before the plane was leaving. So they had already started boarding at this point. So he signed the paperwork. I was like, obviously thanking him so much. I was like on my knees, like, "Thank you so much for coming down here." Got through security without issue, got Lola on the plane without issue, had no issues getting my bags. Like, literally it was flawless after that. They told us when we got off the plane that the U.S. was going to be checking our temperature and putting us in separate rooms and all this stuff. Nothing. Got right through, no issues at all. Did have to have a delayed flight in Miami, but basically made it happen. So I've been here since March 12th or something like that. And obviously I am not going back anytime soon with the current situation. Argentina closed its borders 3 days after I left, I want to say, something like that. And they are not going to be opening them anytime soon. They are being much more strict than the United States, which I personally think is a good thing. Yeah, I have very mixed feelings. I'm not going to even talk about that because I feel like all of this starts issues with people, but yeah, it's pretty remarkable what's happening right now. So just trying to stay sane, and this is now a really long video, so I'll probably just cut it here, but I wanted to tell people that story and let people know that I'm here and I'm safe. And I cannot wait to go back. So as soon as this is over, I will be on the first plane out. Right now I have a return ticket in June. That's probably not going to happen. So we'll see how much I can change it after that. But yeah, I'm really, really grateful to everyone who helped me that day. Patience, who was the one who brought Lola originally, helped me figure out all the paperwork that I needed for the airline within a matter of like seconds, you know. And she was just like, this is what you need to do, and we had to like change some stuff and like make some stuff in my name instead of her name, and so I was super grateful for that. Obviously Jessie was my lady in shining armor, knight, I don't know. What do you call a female version of a knight? Or maybe those are not sex specific? I don't know. Anyways, she obviously was full crisis mode helping me, so that was wonderful. Literally everything had to go perfectly for me to be able to get out. If that vet hadn't been there, if that guy wasn't willing to come down, if the guy wasn't willing to call him, if the lady at the ticket counter was having a bad day and like didn't want to do it, like literally everything had to be perfect. And so I'm just so grateful for the people that understood like the, I wouldn't say pain that I was in, but like the kind of turmoil that I felt about getting out as quickly as I could when shit started to get really scary. You know, I'm just really happy, and I feel like I can't complain about anything about how, you know, I'm stuck in quarantine, yada yada, whatever. It's like, no, I mean, yeah. So anyways, I'm rambling now. Okay, talk to you guys later. Bye.